Well, happy Friday, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're wearing your red shirt for Red Friday. Remember everyone deployed, for our first responders, our soldiers, and military people, wherever they might be in the world. We want to remember them and give them support and say thank you for their dedication to their service. Alrighty, today's shout out is going to be a mail call. And this mail call, I've already slit the envelope just to make it easier, comes to us from Digger 1, Digger 2, and Digger 3, who are Mick and his two sons in England. And there's a note inside. And a little while back I sent some stickers to Digger 2 for his scrapbook. And this is a letter back from his dad. It says, "Dear Ian, thank you for your support and the stickers. I have put a gift in this letter for you. Thank you again from a friend over the pond. Stay safe." And signed Digger 1, Digger 2, and Digger 3. I don't know if you can see that or not. There we go. Oh, let's have a look in the envelope, shall we? Here we go. Well, here's the gift. And he has sent me, it's a, if you can see that, it's actually a Canadian quarter that was produced. It says there was, this is a 2008 poppy quarter, and it's there was 11 million of them minted. And it weighs 4.4 grams, minted in 2008, and it is 23.88 millimeters in diameter. So there we go. Thank you very much, Mick. That's really very thoughtful of you. So, beautiful quarter. I don't know if it would be mint, but it definitely looks uncirculated for sure. And then we have some stickers. Oh, this one, if you can see that, it says video audio recording. And there's one here from another channel, Treasure Bandits Metal Detecting UK. So I'll put their link up in the description box below. And we also have Anglo Detecting. So they must be channels that I haven't heard of them. I'll check them out though. And then we have the ones for the Digger. This is Digger 1. This is channel sticker. And Digger 2. Digger 2 is a real cutie. I always enjoy watching him when he's with Mick. And Digger 3, who is Mick's, well, I don't know if it's his oldest son, but a slightly older, he's older than Digger 2 anyway. And then we have a couple of stickers, and it says, "This item is fitted with GPS tracking in case it's stolen." There we go. See that? That's cute. I don't know if you can see that or not. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Digger 2, Digger 3, and Digger 1, Mick. That's really sweet of you. I'll put links to all 5 of those. Well, there's only actually 4 channels. Digger 2 is on Digger 1's channel with him, and I believe Digger 3 has his own channel now. And anyway, I'll put links to the channels in the description box, so be sure and check them out. And thank you again for the beautiful gift. Alrighty, are you ready for story time? We're continuing now with Chapter 2, Part C. And if you remember last week when we ended, they had just woken up, saw a companion bird by their fire. Then they loaded the Jeep, and trying to stall, having to get out on the rough road, they did some rifle target practice. And we'll pick it up from there, shall we? When we finally began jolting westward again, we did our first actual mapping work of the journey. Dave halted the Land Rover beside a muddy hollow and climbed out. "We'll take a water reading. There are several bores like this one further along the track." "What's the point of it?" I said. I was feeling hot, tired, and irritable. And even though this was to be the first useful work of the whole trip, it seemed at this moment to be utterly futile. We were in a sandy plain which stretched out in all directions to the horizon, without a hill, hummock, or tree. A few shreds of gidgee bush cowered close to the ground. There were no animals, no birds, and the wind had blown a layer of dust over any previous tire marks along the track. Dave turned on me. He must have been just as irritable as I was. "We didn't come all the way out here for flamin' joyride, cobber. We're here to work. Get dry behind the ears, son. There's a lot you don't know yet about Northern Territory. These boreholes are marked on the map because they might mean the difference between life and death for some poor dried-out drover taking cattle from one homestead to the next. If a bore dries up, we need to know, so we can rub it out on the map." His face, with 2 days of stubble on the chin, glared at me from a distance of 3 feet. "Ask any questions all you like, cobber. Stop me any time you like and I'll tell you, because that's the point of it. You're here to learn. But don't knock the job, or you'll find you've made yourself a bad enemy." Oddly, I felt neither angry or resentful. It all made sense, and it whipped me up out of the rut of boredom and discomfort, which made me question what we were doing. I jumped out of the Land Rover and helped Dave get out the measuring poles, then held them steady in the bore while he took the reading and compared it with the figures on the last visit made by a mapmaker. "Not so good," he muttered. "Where does the water come from anyway? There's no sign of a stream." "They run underground." Dave's face relaxed. The outburst was over. "There's a whole network of streams deep down in this country. Find the right spot and sink your bore. Then you're a rich man. You can run a herd, even make some of the land fertile enough for a garden and fresh vegetables. Without a bore, you might just as well be on the moon. You depend on the outside for every ounce of food, and you've no way of earning a living unless you strike minerals." "Opals and gold, you mean?" "Oh, other things as well. Up in the north, at a place called Rum Jungle, there's a uranium mine. Copper, too, and manganese, and tin." He jerked his thumb downwards. "Why, one of these days a prospector might strike minerals right here on this spot. A water bore could make all the difference between a paying proposition and a dead loss." "Why?" "Well, it isn't cheap lumbering every drop of water hundreds of miles in a tanker lorry. You'd have to make up the road, otherwise your tanker gets stuck or bust an axle in the ruts." I nodded slowly as I began to get a glimmering of the Northern Territory economics. There were plenty of idealistic things one could do here in the desolate inland, but the key question in all of them was, would the costs be greater than the returns? And the biggest factor in all calculations was water. "Not much of it here," continued Dave. "The level's gone down badly. Either the underground stream is changing course, or the water's being drained off at a point higher up. A new bore, almost likely." He put the measuring rods back into the Land Rover. 2 hours later, we stopped to measure the level of another bore, and then, in the early afternoon, we found ourselves heading towards an immense dust cloud, which at a distance looked like an impenetrable wall of rock. Dave stared at it, puzzled. "We should be coming up to Top Springs, but I've never known it to look like this before." A few moments later, he laughed. "I know what's kicking up. It's dust. It's race day." "What? Out here in the wilds?" "It's a big thing, the biggest gathering of the year. People come from homesteads and cattle stations hundreds of miles away." We were in the dust cloud now. Alongside the track were other Land Rovers, open trucks, battered cars. "There's the racetrack over on the left," said Dave. A rough wooden railing marked the edge of the trace, which was of earth leveled out by a bulldozer. A thin layer of sand had been scraped off the surface. I looked inquiringly at Dave, and he grinned. "Let's take a break. It's a long time since I went to the races." It was a long time since I had been too, and the Top Springs meeting bore no relation to anything I had ever seen on a racetrack at home. The course was oval and a fair size, but very rough. As we approached the rails, we saw just how rough, and what opportunities this gave for cheating. The horses, provided from ordinary stock on the cattle stations, were not trained for racing, or even for galloping long distance. In the clouds of dust, the spectators had little chance of knowing what was going on when the riders went down the back straight. I was thankful afterwards that I had kept my wallet in my pocket. Not so lucky was the bookmaker who had come down all the way from Darwin. According to Dave, the man's homeward trip was made with empty pockets. For on such unknown quantities as these horses and jockeys, it was impossible to calculate fair odds. One rider, a station hand, won every race he entered. He was a half-caste, half-white, half-aborigine, and he came from Victoria River Downs. "I used to ride for money in them big races," he boasted. "The bookie, he don't know that." It was after racing ended that I discovered the real reason Dave had stopped to watch. Part of our job was to photograph all the improvements, such as new bores, fences, or roads, that had been added in the last few years. Now, crowding around the trestle table bars, drinking their winnings or bemoaning their losses, were the very station owners from whom we would have to get our information. Dave surveyed them from a distance and screwed up his face comically. "Not that we'll get much out of 'em, not on a night like this. It'll be all beer and singing, and by the time we get 'em to talk, they'll be too tight to remember where they live. Not that I hold it against 'em," he grinned. "You can't blame 'em. Out here it's a long, long time between drinks." He was right about not getting much information. I tried to question one huge bronze station cocky about the location of a borehole, but all he did was push the map away and start another verse of a song that seemed to go on forever. After half an hour in which I failed to learn a single useful fact, I gave up and went back to the Land Rover. Dave was sitting there already, in a blue haze of pipe smoke. "Any luck?" "No, nor did I. We'll drive up the track far enough to get away from the noise, then we'll make camp." I thought we had seen the last of Top Springs, but I was wrong. In the morning, grinning, Dave drove back again, just to see if the party was still going on. It was. An all-day drive brought us finally to Victoria River Downs. VRD, as it's known, lies along the bank of the river and is one of the biggest cattle stations in the whole of the Northern Territory. I still had that ridiculous idea of what it would be like, the downs, the lush river, the Victorian houses. And it was almost a surprise to find it was just like any other cattle station along the route, except for one thing, the Aborigines. Until now, I had seen Australia's native inhabitants only in ones or twos, but here at VRD there was a big colony of them under the care of the station. VRD is almost entirely self-supporting. The community kills all its own meat, bakes its own bread, tans its own leather for saddles, and is able to keep and feed a total of more than 100 people. They rely on occasional long journeys to towns only for clothes and machinery. We were taken out to the airstrip. Between it and the river was a corrugated iron shed. It would be our home for the next few days. We settled in and collected enough firewood to do our cooking. It was then that I noticed Dave, for the first time since I had met him, not pulling his weight. He moved at half speed, carrying far less than his usual load of firewood, and his tan face was darker than usual, with beads of sweat trickling down his cheeks. "Take it easy," I told him. I put his bedroll in the shade and told him lie down for a little while. I gave him a drink, which he gulped eagerly. Only then did I realize that it was hotter than I had ever known before in my life. I felt as if I were being slowly dried out, baked to the bone and leather, like the desert victims described with such grisly relish by the old hotel owner at Newcastle Waters. It was, strangely, cooler on the move than lying still. After I had settled Dave comfortably in the shadiest spot I could find, I took my rifle and went out to explore. The grass around my feet was long, dead, and bleached white by the sun. I wondered if the patch of trees and scrubland I could see a mile away would provide any game for the cooking pot. I was getting fed up with steak after a diet of practically nothing else for weeks. I would even be eager to bag a rabbit or two, but for the certainty that Dave, like nearly all Australians, would shudder at the thought of eating them. Plagued by rabbits, many Australians put them in the same class as rats, vermin to be exterminated. Eat them? Ugh. But I never reached the trees. Long before I was halfway across the broad plain of dry grass, I heard the sound of an aeroplane in the distance. In spite of the heat, I ran back to camp, shouting to Dave that our little Cessna was arriving. Dave sat up, managing a grin, even though he clearly did not feel in the mood to drive to the airstrip and welcome Joe. "Stay where you are," I shouted, and jumped in the Land Rover. But there was no keeping Dave quiet now. We had the prospect of starting work. He staggered over to the passenger side and clambered into the seat. 5 minutes later, I was to meet one of the most remarkable men in the Northern Territory. And that's the end of Chapter 2. So next Friday, we'll start Chapter 3, which is titled Mapping from the Air. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed today's chapter. And I hope you've girded yourself and prepared yourself, exercised your vocal cords, and are ready for the groaner of the week. A psychologist was introduced to a new patient by his receptionist and invited the patient in, had him sit down on the client's chair, and said, "Now, what can I do for you? What's troubling you?" He says, "Doc, I have this real bad problem." The doctor says, "Well, that's what I'm here for, to help you with this. So, just relax. Doctor-patient confidentiality. I'm not going to tell anybody else. You can speak openly to me." "Really, Doc? Oh, yeah, no problem. Just, if I can't help you if you don't tell me what's bothering you. And, hopefully if you tell me, then we can work through it together." "Oh, that's great, Doc." He says, "Well, the problem is I like shoes better than boots." The psychologist says, "You like shoes better than boots?" "Yeah, Doc, way better than boots." "Well, that's not really a problem. That's not an issue." He says, "Most people prefer shoes to boots. I myself wear shoes all the time, and very, very rarely ever wear boots. I much prefer shoes." And the patient just goes, Oh, that makes me feel so much better to know that. How do you like yours, baked or barbecued?" Well, there you go. There's your groaner for the week. Hope you're going to have a good weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday, and we'll have some fun in the kitchen. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.